Chain Drug Review and Mass Market Retailers Video Forum. Brought to you by the Emerson Group.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Wolt, Editor-in-Chief of Chain Drug Review and Mass Market Retailers. Welcome to our video forum. Today, we're delighted to have as our guest Kathleen McLaughlin, Chief Sustainability Officer at Walmart. Great to have you with us.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me.
You and your colleagues have said on many occasions that you want Walmart to be a regenerative company. Tell us what precisely that means and how far along are you in getting there?
Yeah, well, that's a North Star for us. And regenerative is a word that means adding back, making better, having a positive impact. That's really our goal. You know, for years, we've talked about sustainability, and that's certainly an important mission. But you can sustain something leaving it just the way it is. And we wanted to really get across this notion that, no, we're actually trying to address some challenges in a way that makes the production of the products that we sell, whether it's food or apparel or electronics, even better for the communities that make them, for the planet, obviously for our customers. And that's really at the heart of that notion of being a regenerative company. So it's a mission, it's a goal, it's something we're working toward. It's really consistent with the founder's legacy, Sam Walton's mission of helping people save money and live better. It's the live better part of our mission.
And I know it's a lofty aspiration. How close are you to achieving it? Or is this one of these things
well,
the work never done?
Probably the work is never done, but I can tell you some of the goals that make that a bit more tangible. So for example, with respect to climate and emissions, our goal is to get to zero emissions in our own operations, and then to work with suppliers in the value chain to help make the production of products essentially low carbon, you know, ideally even no carbon over time. That's a goal. Nature. A lot of what we sell relies on ingredients that come from forests or grasslands or oceans. So working with farmers, working with fishers, working with people in communities on practices around agriculture and fisheries and so on, that could actually be restorative for soil health or watersheds, water systems, pollinator health, and so on. And that's really this regenerative notion. Or people working in supply chains. Supply chains ought to be a real opportunity for prosperity for people. How do we help that be the case in terms of jobs and safety of people working in supply chains, livelihoods, advancement, you know, et cetera?
I know you've talked about always wanting to be guided by science and to set science-based targets. Could you talk a little bit about the process of evaluating climate science as it unfolds, and then how you go about translating that into corporate policy?
Yes, we work closely with a number of organizations and take inspiration and guidance from their science. So for example, Environmental Defense Fund, World Wildlife Fund, we became one of the first retailers to set a science-based target for emissions reduction back in 2017. And it was really working with them on guidance for how to measure emissions, how to report it, et cetera. World Resources Institute is another organization, Nature Conservancy, Conservation International, and so on. So generally, we find in the different areas where we work, there are organizations like that that have standards around targets, how to measure impact, et cetera. And that's been really, really helpful to us as well as suppliers and other folks that we work with.
You recently achieved a major milestone. You completed Project Gigaton 6 years ahead of schedule. Maybe you can tell us what Project Gigaton accomplished and how you managed to get there so quickly.
Project Gigaton is a project to lower emissions in value chains. So, you know, as I mentioned, whether you're talking about produce or meat or apparel or electronics, any of these value chains, there are emissions involved in manufacturing and farming and so on, transporting and even using products. So we worked with a number of organizations, including Environmental Defense Fund, World Wildlife Fund, and so on, to say, well, what could we as a retailer do? How could we engage our suppliers to reduce emissions in value chains? And we did some math across our business and said, gosh, we ought to be able to help them reduce, avoid, sequester a gigaton worth of emissions between the time we set out on all of this back in 2017 and 2030. So we called it Project Gigaton. Our first idea of a name was Supplier Challenge, and the supplier said, that's not so inspiring. And it was a gigaton that we were going for. So that's what we called it. And we wanted this to be an initiative that was really helpful for suppliers and helpful for customers. So projects that would actually strengthen the businesses, find efficiencies, find improvements in quality of the products that suppliers were producing, and really make it grounded in value for business as well as for the climate, for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So we identified 6 different arenas of actions for suppliers and worked with these organizations, the NGOs, to identify the kinds of projects that could generate emissions reductions, but could also generate cost savings or improved quality of products and so on. And then we supported suppliers with different kinds of tools and programs, education, training, learning, to go after these opportunities. So for example, energy efficiency, working with suppliers who have factories to improve energy efficiency, to lower their energy needs. That also saves emissions, would be an example. Or shifting to renewable energy. So we created a program called the Gigaton PPA to help suppliers get access to renewable energy. And we've had our first cohort go through that program that's been supported by Ørsted to actually take advantage of renewable energy through one of their projects in the Midwest. Packaging. So shifting packaging, eliminating packaging, shifting materials can not only reduce waste, but it can also lower emissions. So we've created some materials to help educate suppliers on packaging transitions. We support them in making shifts. There's a program called Circular Connector that helps suppliers link up with third-party providers of packaging solutions. Waste reduction is another arena for action. So suppliers, for example, finding ways to divert materials that would otherwise go to landfill into other uses. Sometimes that's even food waste that can be used for animal feed or anaerobic digestion, for energy, for composting, instead of going to landfill. And of course, outright reducing waste is another big lever. And then another arena for action has been nature. So regenerative agriculture practices, people adopting cover crops or no-till practices. We work quite a bit with suppliers in the Midwest of the United States who are engaging farmers to adopt more regenerative practices, which over time can actually enhance soil health, improve water quality, prevent nutrient runoff into watersheds, and even enhance yield. So, for example, we have a collaboration with Pepsi and with General Mills right now, where we are co-funding initiatives supporting farmers in the Midwest to adopt these. All of those kinds of practices also happen to lower emissions. So these are really practical projects that, generally speaking, are producing a number of other benefits besides emissions reduction. And I think it's one of the reasons that we got to the goal so early. The suppliers see the value. They want to pursue these projects. A lot of times they just need support. They need some training or education or tools or ways to go faster. And that's really what we're trying to provide through this program.
A couple of things occurred to me while you were talking. Can you help the audience understand what a gigaton is? How much carbon does that represent?
Oh gosh, well, it's 1 billion metric tons of emissions. So I don't really have a way to kind of put that into words other than to say in the United States, I believe the annual emissions of the entire country are 6 billion. So taking 1 billion out is a significant, portion of that on an annual basis. That's a gigaton over the life of, cumulatively up to now. But it's a significant portion of emissions.
Yeah, no, that's a tremendous accomplishment. When you started Project Gigaton, how hard was it to convince suppliers to get on board?
At the start, it was really a matter of people not necessarily knowing even what that meant. I remember we had our first supplier forum where, we invite all our suppliers into Bentonville and we talk about goals for the year ahead in general. And we started talking about this. And we had some folks come up to us afterward and said, well, listen, I'll participate in this greenhouse gas project, but I don't know if we don't have any greenhouses, so I'm not sure how relevant it is for us. That was the level of understanding among some. So in the early days, it was more explaining what are emissions, why do we care about them, where do they come from? And then very quickly that started to shift. I think as the world became increasingly aware of the connection between emissions and warming and the consequences of that, and suppliers themselves, their own customers, their own employees, investors, et cetera, started to ask about this. And then we actually held a number of sessions that were more educational, helping people understand what were some business opportunities for them, how could they go after this. I would say within the first couple of years, there was a much greater understanding and people actually really craving more in terms of support and help and so on. One of the things that we did also was to create a couple of different levels of participation and recognize suppliers who are truly leading and innovating. So for example, we've created a cohort called the Giga Gurus. So these are supplier organizations that have set goals for emissions reduction, made those public. They're reporting their progress. They're active in at least 3 of the innovation arenas I mentioned. So it might be energy and nature and waste or packaging or product design or what have you. And those folks are really leading the way. We had over 1,100 Giga Gurus as of, January. We had over 5,900 suppliers engaged, formally signed up and working on Project Gigaton. And that represents over 3/4 of our business on a revenue basis. So it's the lion's share of our assortment is covered by folks who are really engaged and working on these kind of innovations.
What are you guys doing to become more environmentally friendly within your stores, within your other facilities, the Walmart owned stuff?
Yeah, so our own operations, we have 2 big goals. One is around energy. And this kind of goes back to the days of Lee Scott, 2005, or a couple of CEOs ago now, who said, gosh, I'd love to see the day when we're powered by 100% renewable energy. We've evolved that goal over time. And now we talk about it as zero emissions, which certainly includes clean energy, but also includes refrigeration, on-site fuels, transportation, et cetera. So that is a big area of effort for us. It includes energy procurement, but also on-site energy generation. So we have a goal to be adding 10 gigawatts of additional renewable capacity in this country, either through projects on our own properties or offsite. And we also have a goal to have 2 gigawatts of that additional energy generation be community solar projects that are helping local communities, especially low and medium income communities close to Walmart facilities. So that's one area in our own operations that quite important to us. Another is refrigeration. And that's converting all of our refrigerators, our freezer cases, even HVAC toward low global warming potential refrigerants. A third area is around transportation. So the heavy tractor trailers you might see on the road that say Walmart, many of those we own. So converting those to renewable sources of energy, whether that ends up being battery and electrification or green hydrogen or what have you, that's also a goal within this time horizon between now and 2040. On-site fuels, so generators or rotisserie chicken cookers, you name it, solutions for that are low carbon. So energy is a big thing. It all ladders up to a goal to get to zero emissions. We're at about 21% or so reduced emissions on an absolute basis since we started, which is pretty good considering our business growth in the last 10 years or so. And, as I say, we're on a glide path down towards zero by 2040. Second big area for us is around waste. And that's another one where we've said our goal is zero waste through our operations. So that means all the corrugate that kind of flows through our operations, you can imagine, right? All the products that come shipped in boxes, the plastic, the shrink wrap that goes around pallets, the food that we don't sell, what happens to that? The general merchandise that we don't sell, what happens to those items? So taking all of that and finding ways to repurpose, reclaim, not have any of that end up in landfill. So it's quite a significant effort that includes reselling things, marking things down, doing a better job of ordering and forecasting to not have product waste in the first place, and then reclaiming and finding second uses for materials over time that would include selling to other parties to repurpose it and so on. So we're at about 78% globally diversion, so avoiding sending to landfill. We have an interim goal to get to 90% by the end of next year, end of 2025, through a whole number of initiatives across those different material types. And then, of course, there's water. Water is one of those issues that, especially in certain regions, is incredibly acute. So the initiatives we have locally based on local water situation to conserve water, to harvest rainwater, to use water efficiently. And then on our properties, often there are initiatives, depending on, again, the local conditions around wetland restoration and management, retaining ponds, pollinator health, in some facilities. So essentially, what needs to happen with respect to nature based on local conditions. And then years ago, we started an initiative called Acres for America with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation in the US, which is to conserve an acre of land for every acre that we were developing for a Walmart supercenter or a neighborhood market or a distribution center and so on. And that program has grown orders of magnitude above the initial goal just through a series of projects that we've invested in to represent 2 million acres of land conserved through projects that we helped fund. Now, to be clear, we don't have 2 million acres worth of land that we've developed. This is orders of magnitude greater than our actual footprint. But we're really excited about that program because these are projects that are in 42 states now across the United States. And it includes camping and hunting and fishing grounds and parks and, in some cases, reclaimed native land, community land. They're really interesting projects. And I would just encourage folks to go ahead and Google that, Acres for America, and just see what's in the state where you live. And that's a program we're really excited to continue and expand over time.
How aware is the Walmart shopper of everything you're doing?
I don't know. It's not something we talk about a lot. Like, our philosophy is this just should be the way retail is. It's not necessarily something special that we think everybody deserves to just go shopping and buy a banana that they feel, okay, this is certified, or get a can of tuna that has been properly fished. That should just be basic. That should just be the way it needs to be the way things are. Like, as a society, we have to live in a way that is in harmony with nature and is good for people. And our philosophy is we want to make the everyday product a sustainable product and not something special that we need to get credit for, what have you. Our customers are busy. They're time pressed. They're looking for convenience. They're looking for value. We just want to serve it up to them. And one of the things I'm personally most proud of is that these innovations we're talking about, whether it's emissions or nature, forests, oceans, pollinator health, these kinds of things, those are core to our low opening price point part of our assortment as much as it is to the higher end of our assortment. So that great value private brand product that you're buying, our great value rice, for example, it's coming from a project that we've invested in Arkansas, where we're lowering the water usage and the energy usage, and that's just great value rice. You don't have to think about it as a customer. You can rest assured. So that's really our philosophy.
Let me ask you a final question. Walmart is the exception to this statement, but it seems to me that the private sector, the business community, has backed off a little bit from its focus on sustainability. First off, I'd be curious if you think that's true, and what do we need to do to get businesses and the government, for that matter, to pay more attention to this?
I think people are as engaged as ever in innovations that are going to address the issues we face, whether they're environmental issues or social issues. I think what has changed is a couple things. One, I think the low-hanging fruit is gone. The easy stuff people have done already, and I'm sure people who are watching, this conversation, folks who are working on this would agree. Like, the easy stuff's done. It's hard now. And then I think secondly, the kinds of things that are driving things forward and really kind of innovating. I think it's more important now to deliver results versus just talk about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there might have been a period 2-3 years ago where people wanted to talk about these things all the time, but maybe they were just starting to do them. And now that folks are doing them, they're realizing, okay, this is the hard work of business innovation. It's no different than any other kind of innovation that we do, whether it's technology or, you know, it is a form of technology. So I just think there's less grandstanding perhaps than maybe there was a few years ago, but the work continues. And the reason is all the things we're talking about are good for business. They're good for sales. They're good for managing cost. They're good for managing resilience and surety of supply in the supply chain. This is just what it takes to run a good competitive business in 2024.
That's a great point to end on. And I must say, you guys are doing fantastic work. And as someone who's very concerned about climate change, you know, I take off my hat to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much. It's great spending time with you. Thank you.